How are you doing, Ms. Johnson? I'm a 42-year-old insurance salesperson. I had to start working immediately after middle school for various reasons. I've worked at gas stations, diners, and once I got my driver's license, I even did delivery for a parcel service. I've done all kinds of jobs over the years. It has been 8 years since I started my current insurance job, having been noticed for my good nature around people in the process. My aunt, who invited me to this current job, must have had a good eye for people. I've been able to achieve great results, much like a fish finding water.
Art Bennett, long time no see.
Ms. Johnson, the executive director of a home building company I was visiting today, recognizes me and stands up to greet me.
Bennett, you're always such a looker.
Oh, come on, I'm just an old man. The term handsome suits someone in their 20s with youthful skin, not me.
Oh, stop. You're a good-looking man. You should enjoy it more.
This is the kind of conversation we exchange as a greeting each time we meet. While many people call me handsome, it's a white elephant to me. Despite being sociable, I don't really enjoy being around people too much. I don't mind spending time alone. In fact, I find it comfortable. Since I was a child, I was a person of sensitive nerves who, conversely, would get tired and lose myself when I was around other people. That's why I need time to retreat into my own shell to protect myself. I don't want that time to be disturbed. I prioritize preserving my own territory over spending time with women. It would be rude for such a person to approach a woman just to satisfy my own needs. Today, I've come to introduce an insurance plan specially designed for all the ladies here. Upon my words, several female employees look up at me with interest. I go around explaining the plan to each one of them. Among them, there is one person who seems to dislike me. Without even having to directly look at their face, my sharp senses, which I've had since childhood, pick up on their prickly emotions. Ms. Johnson, I'll explain it to you as well.
Oh, you're considering me as a woman too.
Of course, Ms. Johnson. She is happily making eye contact with the women around her. Today, I could secure 10 contracts in this company. Ms. Johnson, thank you for your time today. May I ask a question? I pointed to the person who seemed to bear animosity towards me and asked her, could you tell me that employee's name?
Oh, Mr. James Anderson. He's a second-year employee here. He's a newbie who transferred to this department 2 months ago.
According to her, he's a very passionate young man who spent his junior high and high school days dedicated to baseball. Besides, he's also quite brilliant and is a promising newcomer from a reputable national university.
If only he were more good-looking, our female employees would be all over him. Just like they were with you, Mr. Bennett.
Well, I'm just the bait wearing a mascot costume. They just need to enjoy looking. To live together, someone sincere like him would be a better choice. I said goodbye to Ms. Johnson, promising to see her again next month. When it comes to my days off, I have a routine. I head to the laundromat to take care of my pile of laundry, then I shop for a week's worth of groceries. I spend the afternoon reading one of the many books I've stockpiled. It may seem monotonous, but it's my routine. However, today is a bit different. I have a monthly meeting to attend. I tidy myself up and head to the meeting place. It's the biggest hospital in the area. I volunteer in the children's ward there.
Ah, it's Bennett. Are you going to read to us a book today?
A familiar young boy calls out to me. And ForTube is hanging from his emaciated limb. His hair completely gone. He wears a wool hat. I brought the picture book you requested last time. In the playroom where the children gather, I began reading aloud. Here, children with serious illnesses, including pediatric cancer, are undergoing long-term hospitalization. Even though they are battling life-threatening illnesses, kids hold bright eyes towards the future. What shall I do tomorrow? What fun things will happen next week, I wonder. Perhaps in a month, will my illness have improved? That's why they love stories about the future. Today's story is about siblings who move to a new home and transform an overgrown backyard into a beautiful flower garden. In this story, there's a boy in a wheelchair living in the house next door. The boy, who was stuck at home and couldn't go anywhere, gradually wants to participate as he realizes that the scenery he sees from his window is changing beautifully and that it's being created by a kid his own age. It's a story about finding friends and hope.
That sounds nice. I'd like to create a garden too.
The children start talking about the kind of gardens they would like to create. Some want a garden with a fountain. Others think it would be fun to have a garden full of fruit trees so they can eat from them every day. The children's creativity knows no bounds. They promise to draw pictures of the gardens they want to create by the time I come back next month. Now, I also have something to look forward to until next month. That's exciting.
What kind of garden would you like, Mr. Bennett?
Let me see. How about a garden with a big tree with a hammock for leisurely naps? The children burst into laughter at my response. They know that I enjoy taking naps. I spent about an hour with them, then said my goodbyes, promising to come again next month. They bid me a sorrowful goodbye, accompanying me all the way to the entrance of the ward.
Mr. Bennett, come again next month, okay?
Yeah, I promise I'll come. As I waved goodbye, a doctor who happened to be passing by called out to me.
Bennett, you seem well.
Dr. Barnett, it's been a while.
It's just the right amount of time since we last met.
Dr. Barnett is the doctor who took care of me when I was a child. When I was in the 6th grade of elementary school, I was diagnosed with pediatric cancer. It was leukemia. Suddenly, my body became heavy, and I was always tired. I couldn't play or go to school like I used to. After I was diagnosed, I was in and out of the hospital repeatedly, and with each chemotherapy treatment I received, my body fell apart even more. On days when I had to hold my stomach in the bathroom because it was so painful to swallow saliva due to numerous mouth sores, there were times when I thought it would be better to die. The ones who saved me were Dr. Barnett and his son, who volunteered and played with the children. His son taught to study and even how to get along with the girl I liked in the ward. He is a reliable older brother, and who stayed with me, holding my hand when times were tough until I could smile. That's still my ideal image of a person. And to get a little closer to that image, I'm doing volunteer work.
By the way, Ms. Johnson, whom we discussed the other day, decided to transfer to our hospital.
Really? I'm relieved that you'll be looking after her. Thank you. I bowed to Dr. Barnett, whom I hadn't seen in a while, and left the hospital. A month later, I was on my way to a home builder for work, this time to introduce insurance for men. I went around explaining to many familiar employees about plans suitable for their children's college education and switching to the best plans according to their age. Then, I approached a young employee who had caught my attention during my previous visit, Mr. James Anderson. Pleasure to meet you. My name is Robert Bennett, and I work as an insurance agent. As my voice broke the silence, Mr. Anderson, who'd been looking down, glanced up, his expression slightly sour. But his next words took me by surprise.
Insurance, huh? I've been thinking I need to get on that, actually. I was about to take a break. Would you mind explaining it to me in more detail?
Despite the mismatch between Mr. Anderson's aura and his words, I responded, of course, and followed him to the break room. Mr. Anderson poured coffee into a mug, even preparing one for me.
It's instant, but please.
He said. I expressed my thanks and took a sip. However, the taste was far from what I'd expected. As I struggled to swallow, Mr. Anderson chuckled, watching me with amusement. He then sipped his coffee leisurely.
I put a bit of salt in it for purifying you.
I see. This unusual saltiness seemed to overpower the aroma of the coffee. Somehow, I managed to swallow without spitting it out and placed the cup back on the table.
You know, I can't stand guys like you who bag jobs just with own good-looking face. It's pathetic. That's all you can do when you only have a middle school education. You're a failure as a man.
Even though I've experienced unpleasant looks from others, I was rarely attacked. Moreover, this is the first time for me when it came to someone I just met. Mr. Anderson, have I caused you any discomfort? If so, I deeply apologize. I will change my attitude henceforth, so could you please tell me what's wrong? Perhaps Mr. Bennett expected me to become angry. But instead, I took modest attitude, so he must haven't known how to respond. He stood up, grabbed the pot of salt, and dumped it on my head.
You want me to tell you what's wrong? You'd know if you thought about it. Or are you saying you've forgotten about what you did to Ms. Johnson because making women cry is such a common occurrence for you?
Miss Johnson. I stood there, a statue with a head covered in salt, trying to decipher his words.
Never step foot in this company again, you womanizer.
Mr. Anderson yelled, making the other employees begin to peek into the break room. Spotting me covered in salt and Mr. Anderson red-faced and shouting, someone ran to call the boss. The person they brought back is Ms. Johnson, who stood frozen with her mouth agape.
What happened, Mr. Bennett? Did Anderson do this?
She stuttered. It seems Mr. Anderson mistook me for a bad guy who made you cry, Ms. Johnson. Afterwards, with the help of the female employees who'd gathered in the break room, I brushed off the salt and cleaned up the scattered salt on the floor.
What do you mean Mr. Bennett made me cry?
Ms. Johnson interrogated, standing tall, and Mr. Anderson looked up defiantly.
I saw you were with Mr. Bennett and crying at the county hospital. Ms. Johnson, weren't you played with Mr. Bennett, forced to abort your child, and that was so painful that you were crying?
To his firm assertion, Ms. Johnson and I exchanged glances, then burst into laughter.
Me, pregnant, with Mr. Bennett's child. That's quite an imagination you've got there.
Sure, pediatrics and OBGYN are next to each other at the hospital, so I guess that confusion is understandable. Oh dear. I explained to Mr. Anderson that I was not dating Ms. Johnson, nor did we have any physical relationship. The reason she was crying at the hospital was that her child was ill, and she was seeking advice from me, who had overcome the same illness in the past.
Ms. Johnson has a child.
Mr. Anderson asked, astonished.
Yes, my 8-year-old daughter has leukemia. Mr. Bennett survived leukemia as a child. So I've been asking him for advice, and he introduced me to a good doctor.
Upon hearing Ms. Johnson's explanation, Mr. Anderson, realizing his big misunderstanding, turned pale and bowed his head.
I'm truly sorry. I said some terrible things. How can I apologize?
It's okay as long as you understand. It's true that I only finished middle school and that I've got a cocky face, I replied.
No, I didn't mean.
Mr. Anderson and Ms. Johnson kept bowing their head in apology to me. Then I made a suggestion to Mr. Anderson that he should join us for the hospital volunteer work next month.
Oh, Mr. Bennett is here. And who's this gentleman?
This is Mr. Anderson. He's good at baseball. Any kids want to play catch. Mr. Anderson was a little awkward at first, being around the sick children, but gradually he became more comfortable and started to play and laugh with them.
I had no idea that you are involved in these kinds of activities. Moreover, you are less popular with the ladies than I am.
All right, spare the unnecessary probing. Please play with the kids. The rather unexpected experience of being covered with salt on my head, but as a result, it seemed like I made some new friend among the volunteers. Sometimes, people judge others based on appearances or assumptions. However, these misunderstandings can always be resolved through conversation.
I'll introduce you to a quiet girl I know next time, Mr. Bennett.
While he is a rather nosy bunch, I think I'd like to enjoy his company and go along with it.